It all started with the letter. I was standing at my mailbox, squinting in the bright, unforgiving suburban sunlight, holding a single piece of paper that felt far too heavy for its 20-pound bond weight. It wasn't in an envelope. Oh no, that would be too normal. It was a single sheet, sealed in the kind of thick, rigid laminate you usually see on ID badges or "Employees must wash hands" signs. It had been wedged, aggressively, into my mailbox's slot. At the top, in a severe all-caps Times New Roman font, it read, "Auditory nuisance violation." An auditory nuisance? I muttered to my cat, Buster, who was watching me from the front window. Buster just blinked, as if to say, "You're the audio engineer, man. You tell me." He was right. I am an audio engineer. I spend 10 hours a day in a soundproofed home studio, obsessing over the difference between a 2K hertz and a 2.5K hertz frequency. I mix podcasts. I master albums. My life is a study in controlled, pristine sound. The only auditory nuisance in my house is Buster, who, every night at 3 a.m., produces a guttural, demonic yowl that means, "I have decided my food bowl is 1/8 empty, and this is an emergency." I scanned the letter. It was from the Homeowners Association. Of course it was. Specifically from its self-appointed president, supreme commander, and chief busybody, Carol. She lived in the immaculate beige house directly across the street. The house where the blinds were always level. The house where the lawn looked less like grass and more like a green concrete slab someone had painted lines on. The nuisance in question? My doorbell. When I moved in 6 months ago, I'd replaced the standard, boring ding-dong with a custom chime. I'm a nerd, I admit it. It was a 3-second, 8-bit, polyphonic jingle. Specifically, the secret found sound from The Legend of Zelda. It was polite. It was nostalgic. It was, crucially, quiet. You couldn't hear it from the curb, let alone across the street. Or so I thought. The letter continued, in horrifying detail. The non-standard, theatrical nature of your doorbell chime is in direct violation of Appendix 4C of the Neighborhood Bylaws, which states all auditory signals must be standard and non-intrusive. Your device is frankly startling. Startling? It was a melodic chirp. A hummingbird fart was more startling. But the worst part, the part that made my skin crawl, was the addendum. At the bottom, there was a log. Logged instances of violation. Past 7 days. Monday, 3:14 p.m. UPS delivery. Tuesday, 11:20 a.m. Girl Scout cookies. Thursday, 6:22 p.m. Pizza delivery, Domino's. Friday, 9:55 a.m. USPS, signature required. My blood ran cold. She logged my pizza delivery. She was sitting there, in her beige fortress, with a stopwatch and a clipboard. This wasn't a neighborhood watch. It was a neighborhood wait, what did he order? I had a sudden vivid image of her sitting at her dining room table, adjusting her glasses, and writing, Domino's, with a sharp, judgmental pencil stroke. She probably has a spreadsheet. Subject Mark Henderson. Log 1822. Suspected pepperoni and extra cheese. Poor fiber intake. The letter concluded with a demand. You have 48 hours to rectify the non-standard signaling device. Failure to comply will result in a $50 fine, which will double for every subsequent 24-hour period of non-compliance. A fine for a Zelda chime. I looked at my house. It was a nice, normal blue colonial. I looked at her house. It was a beige box of judgment. I looked back at the letter. Okay, I said to Buster, who had now joined me on the porch. $50 for a chime. I wasn't angry yet. I was just baffled. This had to be a misunderstanding. She couldn't possibly hear it. She was probably just bored. I'm a reasonable guy. I'm a new neighbor. I'll just go talk to her. We'll have a sensible chuckle, I'll explain it's barely audible, and we'll move on. I folded the laminated letter, which took an impressive amount of core strength, stuffed it into my back pocket, and started across the street. I walked up her perfectly edged concrete path. There she was, Carol, in the flesh. She was on her hands and knees on her lawn. At first, I thought she was praying, maybe to the god of suburban conformity. But as I got closer, I saw she had a small, 6-inch metal ruler in one hand and a tiny pair of silver shears in the other. She was measuring her grass blades, and snipping the ones that were, I guess, too ambitious. Carol? She didn't look up. She just held up a single, pale finger. One moment. I stood there, feeling like I'd just interrupted a very important, very tiny surgery. She finished her snip, blew the microscopic clipping off her ruler, and then rose to her feet in one stiff motion. She was a tall woman, thin as a rail, and wore a beige visor that matched her house. Mr. Henderson. Her voice was as flat and dry as unbuttered toast. Hi, Carol. Listen, I got your note. I pulled the laminated sheet from my pocket. It sprang open with a loud thwack. It's a formal notice of violation, she corrected. Right. Look, I think there's been a massive misunderstanding. There is no way you can hear my doorbell from over here. It's an 8-bit chime. The speaker is inside the house. It's maybe 40 decibels, tops. I'm an audio engineer. I know my levels. You can't hear it. Carol stared at me. Her eyes were a pale, washed-out blue. I don't hear it, Mr. Henderson. I perceive it. It's a high-frequency puncture in the neighborhood's sound profile. I just stared at her. The neighborhood's sound profile? Correct, she gestured to the street. This neighborhood is built on a foundation of ambient, non-intrusive sound. The rustle of approved ornamental trees, the gentle hum of code-compliant air conditioning units, the standard ding-dong of a proper doorbell. That blip, bloop, bloop you have is theatric. It's distracting. It draws attention. It draws... Carol, my air conditioner is louder than that chime. Your wind chimes are louder than that chime. I pointed to the set of metal tubes hanging by her door, which were clanging away in the breeze. My wind chimes, she said, her voice dropping a few degrees, are an approved aesthetic enhancement, as detailed in Appendix 7B. Your doorbell is an unsanctioned, frivolous noise. It's whimsical and whimsy, she said, as if the word left a bad taste in her mouth, is the first step toward peeling paint and cars on blocks. You have 48 hours. She turned, bent down, and went back to measuring her grass. I was dismissed. I walked back to my house, my brain buzzing. Sound profile. Whimsy. High-frequency puncture. She was talking like a Bond villain who'd just taken over a paint swatch company. I went into my garage. I was fuming. But I'm a busy guy. I have work to do. I don't have time for a whimsical war with the grass snipper. Fine. She wants standard. I'll give her standard. I dug through a plastic tub labeled Old Audio Junk. In the bottom, beneath a tangle of RCA cables and a broken 8-track player, I found it. The original doorbell, the one the builder had installed in 1992. It wasn't a ding-dong, it was a buzzer. A big, ugly, beige-yellow plastic box with a metal grill. I spent 20 minutes wiring it in. It was a simple 2-wire job. When I was done, I stood back, took a deep breath, and walked outside to press the button. Bzzzt. The sound was staggering. It was the noise a dying robot makes while gargling bees. It was the sound of a 1970s game show, but only the part where you lose. It was loud. It was obnoxious. It was completely and utterly devoid of whimsy. It was, in every sense of the word, standard. I pressed it again, just to be sure. Bzzzt! My cat, Buster, bolted from the living room sofa and dove under my bed, a flash of orange and white terror. Horrible, I said to myself, smiling. She's going to love it. 2 days passed. 2 blissful, buzzer-filled days. The mailman rang it. The Amazon driver rang it. I rang it a few times myself, just for kicks. Each time that bzzzt cut through the air, a glorious, grating monument to compliance. I'd look across the street and see Carol's blinds twitch. It was beautiful. Then, on Wednesday morning, I found the second letter. Laminated, of course, jammed in the box. Auditory nuisance violation. Second notice. Are you kidding me? I ripped it out of the box. Your new standard chime, the letter read, while no longer theatric, is excessively jarring. Its decibel level clearly violates City Noise Ordinance 14.7. Furthermore, it rang at 7:02 a.m. this morning, a full 58 minutes before the 8:00 a.m. Quiet hours agreement expires. See Bylaw 9F. I checked my security camera footage. The incident at 7:02 a.m. was the mailman. He had, in fact, rung the bell. Once. This was a trap. My theatric chime was too weird. My standard chime was too loud. I was in a catch-22, designed by a beige-clad dictator. I wasn't baffled anymore. I was annoyed. I grabbed the letter and marched right back across the street. She was out front again, this time wiping down her mailbox with a disinfectant cloth. "Carol!" She turned, her face a mask of placid disapproval. "Mr. Henderson, I see you received the second notice." "This is insane," I said, waving the letter. "You told me to get a standard one. This is the most standard chime on earth. It came with the house." "It's aggressive," she said, as if that settled it. "It's a sonic assault. And you rang it before 8 a.m. I was in the middle of my morning meditation. It was disruptive." "I didn't ring it. The mailman did. What am I supposed to do?" I was losing my cool, and I knew it. Am I supposed to put up a sign? "Dear mailman, do not ring bell before 8 a.m. per Queen Carol?" A thin, reptile-like smile touched her lips. "That would be a start, but the sign itself would need HOA approval for font, color, and materials. You'd have to submit a request to the Architectural Review Committee. That's me, by the way. I'd deny it. Too much clutter." She had an answer for everything. She wanted this fight. "So what's the solution, Carol?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. "My quiet chime is illegal. My loud chime is illegal. What's left?" She put her cleaning cloth down and folded her hands. "That's obvious, isn't it? Just disable it. Disconnect the device. That seems best. We prefer a quiet, knock-only neighborhood." "Disable it," I repeated. "Yes, no chime, no violation. Simple." She smiled again. "Have a wonderful day." She went back to polishing her mailbox. I stood there, vibrating with a new, pure kind of rage. She wasn't just a busybody. She was a tyrant. She wanted to win, and she was rigging the game. "Fine," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I went back home. I went to the garage, got my wire cutters, and opened the buzzer box. Snip, snip. The doorbell was dead. I went to my computer, typed up a sign in plain black and white Helvetica, printed it, and taped it to my door. It read, "Doorbell broken. Please knock." A week passed. A quiet, horrible week. Here's what I learned about delivery drivers. They do not knock. Knocking is a polite rat-a-tat-tat with a knuckle. What I experienced was different. The UPS guy, a big dude named Terry, used what I can only describe as a full palm slap. It was a thwack that shook the peephole. The Amazon drivers, who are always in a hurry, used a rapid-fire fist pound, a thud, 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 boom that rattled the deadbolt. The pizza kid didn't even use his hand. He used his whole forearm, like he was trying to perform CPR on the door. Bam, bam, bam! It was 1,000 times louder, more jarring, and more aggressive than any doorbell in human history. Every delivery was a jump scare. Buster was now living permanently under my bed, and the best part, Carol's house was silent. Not a peep, not a twitch of the blinds, until this morning. I went to the mailbox and there it was. A third letter. Laminated. Final notice. Structural and auditory violation. I didn't even wait. I just tore it open. The constant percussive pounding on your front door, it read, is creating a low-frequency vibration. This vibration is, according to my observations, causing stress fractures in my ceramic swan collection. This is unacceptable. Furthermore, Bylaw 12A requires all homes to maintain a fully operational signaling device for emergency and notification purposes. Your broken doorbell is a violation. Fix it immediately. I stood on my porch, holding this third letter. I looked at the sign taped to my door. I looked at the letters in my hand. Quiet chime is illegal. Loud chime is illegal. No chime is illegal. Pounding is illegal. It was an impossible, four-sided trap. I was being fined for sound and fined for silence. I looked up, across the street. She was there, standing in her front window, framed perfectly, watching me. She wasn't even hiding it. She just stared, her face blank. She had me. She knew it. I felt a slow, cold calm wash over me. The rage was gone. In its place was clarity. She wanted a fully operational signaling device. She didn't want theatric. She didn't want jarring or aggressive, but complained about silence. And she complained about vibrations. "Okay, Carol," I whispered to the empty street. "She wants a signal. She wants one that's fully operational." I went inside. I went to my studio. I sat down at my computer. I wasn't just an audio engineer anymore. I was a man with a mission. I typed into my professional sound library search bar. Siren. This was no longer about compliance. This was about art. I am, at my core, a professional. I wasn't just going to get a loud horn. That's for amateurs. I wanted precision. I wanted a sound that was not just loud, but full. Something with a rich, complex frequency spectrum designed for one thing and one thing only. Maximum, undeniable, soul-shaking attention. I bypassed the police and ambulance files. Too common. Too tacky. Then I found it. The one. The file name was Wabuyam. Air Raid Siren, UK Vintage, Hi-Fi Uncompressed. Wovie. It was a 24-bit, 192K Horsts uncompressed WAV file, a digital recording of a genuine, British, hand-cranked air raid siren. The real deal, the run for your life, the bombs are coming special. It wasn't just a noise. It was a feeling. It had that terrifying two-tone whoop that starts low, rises to a shriek, and then cycles back down. It was a sound designed to trigger a primal run-for-cover response in the deepest, most lizard-like part of your brain. And it was beautiful. But a sound file is nothing without the right hardware. My tiny 1-inch doorbell speaker wouldn't cut it. My 5-watt buzzer was child's play. I needed amplification. I needed projection. I went online. I ordered 2 massive, weatherproof outdoor PA speakers, the kind they use to announce homecoming at a Texas high school. The kind that can project a marching band over the roar of 10,000 people. I also ordered a 2,000-watt Crown amplifier and 100 feet of heavy-gauge, plenum-rated speaker wire. I paid for next-day shipping. The boxes arrived at 9 a.m. The Amazon driver, seeing my broken doorbell sign, did his signature thud, thud, boom on the door. "This is the last time," I whispered, hoisting a 40-pound speaker onto my shoulder. I needed help. I could run the wires, but I didn't want to drill through my own exterior walls and fascia. I needed a professional. I needed an electrician. I called a local company. A guy named Sal said he could be there by noon. Sal pulled up in a beat-up Ford Transit van, whistling. He was a big, beefy guy with a cheerful, walrus-like mustache. "All right, boss, what are we wiring up?" he said, grabbing his tool belt. "A doorbell," I said, deadpan. Sal stopped. He looked at the 2 massive PA speakers sitting on my porch. He looked at the 2,000-watt amplifier. He looked back at me. "A what?" "A doorbell," I repeated, pointing. "I need those 2 speakers mounted under the eaves, right there and right there. And I need the wires run clean into this front closet." Sal stared at the speakers again, then at me. "Son, that's not a doorbell. That's a concert rig. You planning to host Coachella on your porch? You gonna blast Freebird till the cops come?" "Nope, just a doorbell. My neighbor's very particular. She's complained about every other sound, so I'm giving her one she can't possibly miss." Sal's eyes drifted across the street to Carol's beige fortress. He saw her trimming her hedges, her back rigid. A slow, beautiful grin spread across his face, lighting up his entire mustache. "This neighbor," he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "She live in the the beige house? The one with the smug little garden gnomes by the path?" "That's the one," I said. "Carol? You know her." Sal let out a low chuckle. "Oh, I know her. She fined me last year. Left a note on my van. Said I was leaking commercial-grade oil on her precious street." "Were you?" "It was radiator fluid," Sal said, throwing his hands up. "A small puddle from a Prius. She tried to get the HOA to bill my company for a full street resurfacing. That woman is a piece of work." He slapped me on the shoulder, hard. "A doorbell, you say? I like it." He looked at the speakers, then at the eaves. "You know, if we angle them just right, we can get some real nice sound projection. Really, cover the local area, for safety. I trust your professional judgment, Sal." "I'll tell you what," he said, grabbing a drill. "I'll throw in the heavy-duty amp mounting for free. For the community." For the next 3 hours, Sal and I were a well-oiled machine. He was an artist. He mounted the speakers perfectly, tucked away under the eaves where they were almost invisible from the street, but angled, oh so slightly, toward Carol's house. He ran the wires with surgical precision through the attic and down the closet wall. While he worked, he told me stories. How Carol tried to ban Halloween decorations. Tacky. How she tried to get a neighbor's golden retriever removed for excessive panting. How she measured the color of everyone's curtains from the street. "She's the final boss, man," Sal said, stripping a wire. "Everyone on this block is terrified of her. You're doing God's work, my friend." By 4 p.m., it was done. The speakers were mounted. The amplifier was installed in my coat closet, glowing with a soft, blue, powerful light. I had the sound file loaded onto a small, dedicated audio player, which I'd wired directly into the amp. The trigger? The original, standard 1990s doorbell button right by my front door. It's a thing of beauty," Sal said, wiping a tear from his eye. "You gonna test it?" "Not yet," I said. "I need the right moment." Right. The element of surprise." Sal packed up his tools, his whistle noticeably more cheerful. "Hey, send me a text when you do, will ya? I'm gonna accidentally leave my van's windows down. I'm 3 streets over, but I'm optimistic." He gave me his card, shook my hand, and drove off. I was alone. The trap was set. The beast was built. All I needed was a victim. I sat on my sofa for an hour, just staring at the front door. The anticipation was thick. It was that feeling you get right at the top of a roller coaster, right before the big drop. A perfect blend of, "This is going to be amazing," and "I may have made a terrible, terrible mistake." Buster, my cat, was curled up on the rug, blissfully unaware of the sonic apocalypse I had wired into our home. I couldn't just press it myself. That felt anticlimactic. It needed a real, unsuspecting button press. It needed a civilian casualty. I pulled out my phone and texted my buddy, Dave. Dave lives 2 miles away and owes me $20. Me. "Hey man, you busy?" Dave. "Kinda. Watching the game? Why?" Me. "Could you swing by? I've got that $20 you lent me." Dave. "You're gonna pay me back? What's the catch?" Me. "No catch. Just come by. And when you get here, can you please ring the doorbell? Don't knock. Ring the bell." Dave. "Okay, weird. But fine. Be there in 15. It was the longest 15 minutes of my life. I peeked through the blinds. The street was quiet. Carol was, predictably, out front. This time she was on a small stepladder, polishing her street-facing windows. She was the perfect audience. My phone buzzed. Dave. "Here." I saw his beat-up Honda pull up. He got out, stretched, and started walking up my path, looking confused. He saw the doorbell broken sign I'd forgotten to take down. He shrugged, then saw the actual, physical doorbell, button next to it. He looked at my window. I gave him a subtle, "Go on" wave. He shrugged again, raised a single finger, and pressed the button. I didn't hear the sound, not at first. I felt it. It was a low, physical vibration that started in the soles of my feet and punched me in the chest. Then the sound hit. Woo! It was the sound of the world ending. It wasn't just loud, it was everywhere. It filled the entire universe. It rattled my molars. Buster didn't just run, he levitated 4 feet in the air, his fur on end, and vanished in a cloud of dust. The sound rose in pitch, a deafening, soul-screaming shriek that I felt in my sinuses. My own windows rattled in their frames. I saw the water in Buster's bowl begin to dance. Outside, the reaction was instantaneous. Every dog in a 6-block radius, not just barking, started howling. A full-on, desperate canine apocalypse. A flock of pigeons that had been roosting on a roof 3 houses down exploded into the sky, like a clay pigeon machine had just fired them all at once. Mr. Henderson, 4 doors down, poked his head out his front door, looked at the perfectly blue, cloudless sky, and then looked at his wife, mystified. Dave. Poor Dave. He was on his knees on my porch, clutching his chest. He looked like he'd just been struck by lightning. And then, Carol. It was the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. She had been on her stepladder. When the siren hit, she threw her bottle of Windex and her cleaning rag straight up into the air. She fell backward off the ladder, a very respectable 2-foot drop, and landed on her butt. But she didn't get up. She scrambled, crab-walked backward, and crouched, terrified, behind her own mailbox, her head on a swivel, scanning the sky for bombers. The siren wailed for exactly 2.5 seconds, then cut off, plunging the world into a sudden, ringing silence. The only sound was the distant, hysterical symphony of dogs and a faint car alarm wailing 3 streets over. Dave was still on his knees, gasping. He looked at me through the window, his eyes wide. He wasn't scared. He was laughing. He was laughing so hard he couldn't make a sound. He just pounded the porch, wheezing. "Mark! What was that? I think I taste metal." I opened the door, a cloud of adrenaline-fueled giggles escaping my chest. That's the new doorbell, man. You like it?" My phone," he gasped, pulling it out. "It thought I was in a car crash. It asked if I wanted to call 911. And then I saw Carol. She was slowly, tremblingly getting to her feet. Her beige visor was askew. Her hair was sticking up. Her face was a shade of puce I had previously only seen on expired plums. She saw me. She saw Dave, who was now rolling on my lawn. She didn't yell. She didn't scream. She just stood there, her entire body vibrating with pure, distilled, 200-proof rage. She raised one single, trembling, accusatory finger. Then she marched back into her house, the door slamming behind her with a sound that was, for once, quieter than my doorbell. "Uh-oh," I said, the laughter dying in my throat. Dave finally got his breath back. "Dude, what did you do?" I think," I said, watching her front window, "I think I just started a war." "Yeah," Dave said, getting up and dusting himself off. "And I think she's calling in the big guns." Sure enough, through her freshly polished, and now probably cracked, window, I saw her, phone clutched to her ear, gesticulating wildly. The cops were on their way. 10 minutes later, a police cruiser rolled up. Not with sirens, thank God, just a quiet, professional arrival. 2 officers got out. One was older, with a face that had seen every stupid thing this suburb had to offer. His name tag read, Miller. The other was a rookie, young, bright-eyed, and trying to look serious. His tag read Diaz. Carol was waiting for them on her lawn, practically vibrating. She'd fixed her visor, but not the look of pure, unhinged fury on her face. Dave had wisely retreated inside my house and was now peeking through the blinds, phone in hand, for evidence. We heard her before they even got to the sidewalk. "Officers, thank God!" she shrieked, power-walking toward them. "You must arrest him. He's terrorizing us. It was a bomb, an invasion. I thought we were at war. I'm a pillar of this community, and he is a public menace. He set off an air raid siren. Arrest him." Officer Miller, the older one, just sighed. It was a sigh that said, "I missed my pension for this." Officer Diaz, the rookie, looked interested. They listened patiently, Then Miller put up a hand. "Ma'am, please. Let's go talk to him." They walked across the street. I was waiting on my porch, leaning against the railing, hands in my pockets. I was going for reasonable homeowner. "Sir," Miller said, his hand on his belt, "we're getting a hell of a complaint from your neighbor. Did you just set off an air raid siren?" "Officer," I said, in the calmest, most rational voice I could muster, "that wasn't an air raid siren. That's just my doorbell." Officer Miller stared at me. Officer Diaz coughed, a sound that was suspiciously close to a snort. He turned away, inspecting a very interesting crack in my sidewalk. "Your doorbell, sir?" Miller asked, his voice strained. "Yes. You see, my neighbor, Ms. Johnson," I said, gesturing to Carol, who was now standing on my lawn, arms crossed, "is the HOA president. And she's been fining me for weeks. I have the letters." I stepped inside for a second and came back with the 3 laminated notices. "This one," I said, "is for my first chime, which was theatric. This one is for my second chime, a standard buzzer, which was too loud and violated quiet hours when the mailman rang it. And this one is for not having a doorbell after she told me to disable it. The bylaws," she says, "require me to have a fully operational signaling device." I fanned the letters out like a winning poker hand. I was in a trap, officers. I couldn't have a quiet one. I couldn't have a standard one. And I couldn't have no doorbell at all. So I installed one that is, without a doubt, fully operational. "It's a weapon!" Carol shrieked. "It's noise pollution! It violates every ordinance in the book!" "Actually, ma'am, it doesn't," I said, pulling a second piece of paper from my pocket. I checked. Miller looked at the paper. Diaz peeked over his shoulder, his eyes wide. "This," I said, "is City Noise Ordinance 33B. It prohibits continuous noise over 90 decibels. My doorbell," I pointed to the PA speakers, "is quite loud, I admit, but it's an intermittent signal. It only sounds for 2.5 seconds per press. It's not continuous. It's perfectly legal, just like a car alarm or a construction nail gun." Officer Miller looked at the paper. He looked at the laminated letters. He looked at the massive speakers tucked under my eaves. He looked at Carol, who was turning a fascinating shade of purple. "Son," Miller said, rubbing the bridge of his nose, you just can't have an air raid siren for a doorbell." "Why not, officer?" I asked, genuinely curious. "The bylaws didn't specify the sound. They just said operational. And believe me, it's operational. Would you like to try it?" From behind Miller, I heard Diaz whisper, "Oh, please say yes." Miller shot him a glare. "No, we're not trying it. Look, sir, this is annoying. It's disturbing the peace." "Is it?" I countered, still calm. "Or is she disturbing my peace by filing frivolous, contradictory, and harassing complaints for weeks? I'm just a guy trying to follow the rules. She's the one who made the rules impossible. I just complied. Vigorously." Miller was stuck. He knew it. I knew it. And Diaz definitely knew it. He was biting his lip so hard I thought he might draw blood. There was no crime here. It wasn't a false report of an emergency. It was just a button. It wasn't continuous noise. It was, as I'd said, just a doorbell. A very, very stupid doorbell. Miller let out a sigh that seemed to deflate his entire body. He turned to Carol. "Ma'am," he said, his voice dripping with exhaustion. Technically, he's not violating the city ordinance. I can't cite him. I can't arrest him. This is an HOA matter. It's stupid, but it's not illegal." But, Carol sputtered. The noise! It's a civil matter, ma'am. You'll have to take it up with your association. Miller paused. And ma'am, please stop calling 911 unless there's a real emergency. A doorbell you don't like is not an emergency. Have a good day. Miller and Diaz turned and walked back to their cruiser. Carol was left on my lawn, sputtering, her ultimate authority having just been publicly revoked. As Diaz got in the car, he looked back at me. He caught my eye. And he gave me a single, subtle, appreciative nod. The cruiser pulled away. It was just me and Carol. I gave her my most polite, non-theatric, non-whimsical smile. Have a wonderful day, Carol. She didn't say a word. She just spun on her heel and speed-walked back to her beige prison, slamming the door so hard I'm sure her ceramic swans took another hit. The story went viral on the neighborhood Facebook group. My doorbell became a local legend. For the next 2 days, it was chaos. The local teenagers thought it was the funniest thing in history. They started ding-dong ditching my house just to set the siren off. They'd hit the button, the whoop would tear through the quiet afternoon, and they'd scatter, laughing hysterically. Carol's house stayed dark. The blinds remained shut. She didn't come out to get her mail. She didn't polish her mailbox. She was, for the first time, a prisoner in her own home. Then, on Saturday, an email went out. Emergency HOA meeting, Sunday, 2 p.m., community pool. It was on. I showed up, along with Dave, for moral support. But when I got there, the entire neighborhood was present. And they weren't looking at me. They were all looking at Carol, who sat alone at a table, looking pale. It turned out I wasn't the only one. The meeting started, and it wasn't about my doorbell. It was about Carol. Mr. Henderson, the guy who'd poked his head out during the test, stood up. Carol, I'm just going to say it. You tried to fine my son for playing basketball. You said the percussive dribbling was upsetting your afternoon. A woman from 2 streets over stood up. You sent me a violation notice because my garden gnome was non-standard. Another guy. She measured my hedges with a tape measure and said they were a ½ inch out of compliance. It was an uprising. For 2 hours, people aired their grievances. The unapproved welcome mats, the tacky holiday lights, the aggressive wind chimes, that weren't hers. Finally, Mr. Henderson called for a vote. All in favor of removing Carol Johnson as HOA president. Every hand went up, including mine. Carol was out. Just like that. A week later, things had quieted down. The teenagers got bored. The dogs were starting to come out from under their beds. I was in my garage, sorting some cables, when a shadow fell over the door. It was Mr. Henderson, the new de facto HOA president. Mark, he said, shuffling his feet. He looked tired. Listen, what a week, huh? You could say that, I said, smiling. Look, the board, such as it is, we had a vote. We're nullifying all of Carol's sound profile and aesthetic enhancement bylaws. All of them. Going back to basics. You know, just don't let your house fall down. Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, look. He jammed his hands in his pockets. We'd really appreciate it. If you'd consider a new doorbell. Please. My cat, Fluffy, hasn't come out from under the bed in 3 days. She thinks the world is ending. I looked at Henderson. He was a good guy. He just wanted to grill and let his kid play basketball. I grinned. You know, I think I can do that. The next day, an Amazon driver walked up my path. He looked terrified. He saw the new, shiny, high-tech doorbell I'd installed. He looked at me, then at the button, his hand hovering. Is it safe? He whispered. I just smiled. Go for it, man. He winced, closed his eyes, and tentatively pressed the button. A polite, quiet, 8-bit, 3-second jingle played. The secret found sound from The Legend of Zelda. The driver let out a sigh of pure, unadulterated relief. Oh, thank God. That's actually pretty cool. Thanks, I said, signing for my package. As he walked away, I looked across the street. The beige house was quiet. The blinds were still shut tight. Peace had been restored to the neighborhood. One 2,000-watt air raid siren at a time.